ahead. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And again, sorry for those technical difficulties, but we will just jump right in. As we're getting started, we would love to hear a little bit more from you and get to know who's with us today in our audience. So if you wouldn't mind popping into the chat box, your name and the school or organization that you are affiliated with, and then just sharing with us, what is your favorite warm beverage? We know we've had a lot of chilly days here in Indiana where we are, and something that helps make me feel a little bit more kind of cozy and makes me feel a little better is having a nice warm beverage. I particularly love coffee. My very favorite would be a gingerbread latte. So I kind of like some of those different flavored lattes. I enjoy those. So I see some people adding some thoughts into the chat. Oh, we have some hot tea drinkers, some hot chocolate drinkers. Ooh, and sleepy time tea before bed. I do like having a nice warm cup of tea before bed too. I just like a lot of hot beverages when it's cold outside. So thank you so much for sharing. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm Angela Fitzgerald, the Director of Programs for the STEM Connection, joined by Vera Vanderkooy, our Executive Director. And we are very excited to be sharing with you today more about connecting STEM and social emotional learning, and kind of thinking about opportunities to incorporate more STEM into social emotional learning opportunities, or maybe some more SEL into the STEM opportunities that you have. So again, right as we're getting started, just to know who is here present with us today, and so we can keep that in mind, I just put up a quick poll with two simple questions. First being what your current role is. So in the work that you do, are you working in a classroom? Are you working more in an informal learning environment? Are you a parent or caregiver? Maybe you do multiple things in that realm. And then also, if is this your first time participating in a STEM Connection program or not? And for that second question, I see we are perfectly split right now. We are 50-50 on those that have joined us before and those that are new to us. And we have a number of high school educators with us today and a couple that clicked other as their role. So a variety of people coming from different places and spaces and experiences, and welcome. If you are not familiar with the STEM Connection, we are a nonprofit organization that works to educate and empower children and adults in the principles of STEM using a hands-on kind of learning approach. The video that we're going to show now will just share a little bit more about who we are and what we do. There's no volume
around them. In our farm space here, we have day camps, and we also have field trips. And those run year round and can be flexible depending on what time of year we're in.
This place was the first place I really got to explore nature. Like my backyard when I was growing up, it didn't really have many woods behind it. So I got to come out here and explore all these woods and these big open fields and just see what nature was really about, and all the fish and birds and things like that.
Kids are free to be in nature and see what they see and ask questions and learn along the way. And it's just a really great informal learning opportunity for kids to come and be themselves and gain skills and experiences that will help them be successful now and hopefully into the future.
All of the activities that we have here are very hands-on, and it gets their minds working and thinking and seeing how things are actually done versus just reading about it. So I really love that aspect, in that everything is hands-on, everything the kids are involved in.
I've had a blast at the STEM Connection. I've made a bunch of memories.
This place has been a blessing for me, and if you want to check us out, you can check us out on our website. You're always welcome, and we'd love for you to come on down.
You guys should check us out online. There's always a space for you. So.
So that video just kind of helps to show particularly more of those programs that we have that happen at our on-site educational learning spot called Moore Road Farm on the northwest side of Indianapolis. But we also offer some programs that can take place at the farm, but might also happen in other places or through other means like today. So we love connecting with community partners and families and being able to join in on family events or other community events. We have, though most of our traditional programming in terms of day camps and some of those events are more aligned to kind of the kindergarten through fifth grade audience, we do have opportunities for middle school and high school students through field trips and through our STEM Future Leaders program. So working with some of those older youth. And then we have our STEM Quick Wins program, which is a library of free STEM activities that are available for anyone to use. We'll be talking a little bit more about those in a little bit. And then opportunities like we have today to just kind of gain some more skills to help provide meaningful STEM opportunities for whatever work we are or whatever youth we're working with. Here we think pictures tell the story. So more pictures just from programming over the past 6 months or so, kind of from summer moving into fall. So really about those hands-on learning experiences. We love to connect with nature, particularly. So lots of those outside opportunities or bringing nature in and being able to make connections in those ways. So now that you know a little bit more about us, Vera's going to start sharing a little bit more about some of the tools we use to help us when we're thinking about and creating our programming.
Thank you, Angela, and I appreciate it so much, all of you with us today. And it's a very timely topic we have, this idea of STEM and social emotional learning and how they connect. We know that 85% of science learning happens outside their traditional classroom. And we also know that the anxiety level of our young people is increased exponentially due to the pandemic. And so when we think about that, we know today what we're talking about is really important. And we know we're looking for ways to connect the dots of that STEM and SEL. How do we bring forward STEM and how do we think about it in that connection with the SEL piece, that social emotional learning, the whole child as we think forward for their benefit and for setting them up for their next stages and for success. When we think about STEM, we're really thinking about the practices that we want youth to be involved with. And we want to think about the verbs that are important. So any activity that we set up, we're thinking about the doing, and we're wondering, how can we set that up so the child can really be involved in that science, really involved in using technology, using it, the engineering and the math, and beyond maybe our traditional way of thinking about it, not just looking at a book or staring at a screen or whatever it might be, but how do we really bring about the doing of those STEM practices as we're setting up an activity? Because we know if that child has opportunity to be engaged in those STEM practices, it really sets the stage for them to have those employability skills that we want them to have when they're seeking a job, when they're moving forward, when they're thinking about their career possibilities, when they're thinking about that next step. So setting them up young with those STEM practices connects with those employability skills that have been set out by the Department of Education and what we know employers are looking for and what helps us be successful in the workplace. When you look at these employability skills, there's probably one that jumps out at you that maybe you have encountered recently in the work you're doing, and you're realizing the importance of it, the power of it. If there's one that's jumping out to you right now, if you could add that into the chat box, that would be great. Is there one specifically when I look at those mindsets or that work ethic or those learning strategies or those social emotional skills that connect to those STEM practices? Is there one that's resonating with you or that you think is something that's important at the moment? What are you seeing, Angela, or is there one that's popping out to you at the moment?
Well, the one that popped out to me was the one that that got first popped into the chat box. And so I think we're all feeling that adaptability, that ability to kind of take what the day brings and just have to kind of go with it and do the best that you can. Really, that's what a lot of us are feeling the past few weeks, the past few months, the past couple of years, where you don't know really what to expect from kind of one week or month or day to the next. So being able to just kind of take the day as it is and make some choices about the day and move forward. So that was exactly what I was thinking. And I saw that pop up in the chat box too.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. I find too, when I look at these, one may resonate one way one day and then another resonates another day. And I think that's interesting that we know they're all important. And I think also with those STEM practices, as I'm teaching a lesson or working an activity into an experience, what's important today may be different tomorrow. And keeping that in mind as we're working with our young people and how we're moving them forward. If it's in that elementary space or that high school space, where does that go? Because we have those STEM practices, we have those employability skills that we're being asked to encourage from as young as pre-K in our learning settings from the Department of Education. And then we have these social emotional competencies. And those social emotional competencies go along with those other two pieces. They intersect. They help us think about how do we move that learning forward when I'm thinking about that whole child and my mind is wondering about what can I do to set them up. I love this visual because it's got a tree in there, and the nature connection to me is so important because I think it allows us to really use those STEM practices in an engaging and hands-on and meaningful way, but it also lets us connect on that other level, that level of where that child's coming from. Are they feeling safe and in a place where they can move forward in their learning? And really those social emotional competencies go back to, is that child feeling safe and connected and ready to learn? So I love this visual. And I also like this one too, because of that circular piece to it and how they all are important, how you have those practices, how you have those ideas of those employability skills, and how that social emotional learning and how all those words, if you're looking at all these different slides we've shared, how they all interconnect. And as educators, if we're formal or informal, we're asked to go ahead and think about that whole child and moving them forward. And we're asked to think about how do we meet them and their needs from that STEM practice space into that social emotional. And we can see how they interconnect and how they help us think about moving that child forward as we look at these different ones. And what we see is important and getting them set up and ready for success. We know they're all important, but how do we go about that? How do we kind of let them be ready for the next step in a learning experience? We use a tool at the STEM Connection that helps kind of connect those dots. I've got a lot on my plate as an educator, formal, informal, wherever I'm coming from, high school, elementary, pre-K, even in the college setting right now, where we're asked to teach some form of content. But we also are dealing with the fact that these young people are coming to us with a lot on their plates besides just the learning that they need to do to set them up for the next step. So I want to keep all those in mind. How do I set that learning up? I was thinking about it before the pandemic. I'm thinking about it even more now in the pandemic because I know that I'm working with young people that have a whole other set of pieces to their puzzle that they didn't have 2 or 3 years ago. And only things are exasperating in what that looks like and the challenges they have. But the good news is we can still make a difference. We can still set up learning experiences in a way that's going to help them move forward. Dimensions of Success is a tool we use because we think about those different components, from that STEM content learning, then also to those pieces that are so important in that social emotional space, from that reflection, those relationships, that relevance, that youth voice, those pieces that we know take that learning to another level. I'm going to let Angela kind of touch on how we touch on these in our space and when we work with young people.
Yeah, and really thinking about kind of focusing on that last column, that youth development piece, where we're thinking about, like Vera was saying, that whole child, that youth and where they are and how we can give them skills to keep them moving forward. So really those social emotional connections with STEM come in those opportunities in that youth development area. they come in some of the other areas, but kind of a little more focused within this column. So we're going to talk about relationships, relevance, and youth voice, and just kind of how, and I think with all of these, you can think about where you are right now and what you do, and just how can you, if you're coming from more of kind of where STEM is more of the comfortable piece and the social emotional piece is a little bit newer, think about what you do for the STEM and how you can just kind of look at it from that with that social emotional lens, and maybe start to incorporate just some little things. Or if you're more comfortable with that social emotional piece, again, kind of taking where you are and viewing it, with that STEM lens to see how you might be able to make some connections with wherever you are, just to kind of help you move forward a little bit. So when we're thinking about relationships, I know I just remember it was just very impactful hearing, when I did spend time in the classroom as a middle school math and science teacher, and just the idea of connection before content, that you can set yourself up for more successful learning experiences when you have a relationship with your students, when the students or the youth and that you're working with have a relationship with each other. So building in those opportunities for the kids to just feel safe and welcomed, and like they are part of the group or the class or the team or whatever, in whatever way that you're working with them. So even today, little things like little questions of the day, or just kind of ways to kind of get started or connected. We asked you to share what your favorite warm beverage was, and that is a way for us to kind of get to know each other a little bit more, to make a connection maybe with someone else that we're with that maybe has the same favorite as you. So a very simple way, even when we're not even able to be together in person, that we can start to form some connections and some relationships pretty easily. So just, and thinking about all of the different relationships that might be within the group that you're working with. So thinking about, that adult to youth relationship, or those relationships, thinking about how the relationships develop among the youth. And then also, how are you modeling and showing positive relationships with other adults? So just kind of all of those different relationship pieces can be important. And some different ways that we do this at the STEM Connection are through intentional kind of belonging time, particularly when it's a group that we're going to be working with for maybe a longer period of time. So for a full day at a day camp, or for a full week of summer camp, making sure that we're having that time every day for belonging, or making sure that we know each other's names. That name tags could be helpful, so you can identify people how they want to be identified, and finding ways to maybe play little icebreaker games or something, and you can sprinkle those throughout the day. But just time to make those interpersonal connections and help those youth feel like they're part of that group. Mood check-ins, having buddies, that can be really successful, buddies within groups, or buddies kind of older, younger buddies, and those types of relationships that can form. So just really thinking about how, you'll be able to be more successful with your content pieces when, those connections and those relationships have formed. Another area kind of in that DOS mindset would be relevance, right? The learning opportunities are going to be more meaningful and have kind of more of an impact when students and youth can see how that information is going to connect to their lives, or connects to their lives in some way. So how can you, either, and again, it can go both ways. You can think about your content piece, what you're focusing on. Maybe it's plants, and then, find ways that content piece has real life connections for those kids. Have they ever planted seeds before? Or what sorts of plants are growing in the spaces around them? Or, what sorts of things do plants need? Has anybody ever taken care of a plant before? So, if you start, you can start with the content and then kind of build in some of that relevance. Or you can think about, what sorts of things are happening in the world around us right now, and how that can connect to some content pieces. So, right now we think about coronavirus and some of those different impacts. So, if we spend some time learning more about, the science behind, what is a virus or what causes someone to get sick or some of those things, and then how does that make us feel, or, what are we experiencing with that? It's going to have an impact and give students an opportunity to make some deeper connections to their lives. So thinking about ways that we kind of do that with the STEM connection that again might work for you, just thinking about some of those current events through that STEM lens. How can you make that science or math connection with something that's happening in the youth's lives? Asking lots of questions, and that can be adult-led questions or providing opportunities for youth to ask questions about things that are happening, and maybe they're wondering something, and that can lead to some really great kind of STEM-backed activities or investigations that you take on. Using literature and journals and giving students opportunities to kind of write down some of their thoughts and ideas are kind of great ideas and tools that hopefully you can use to help you out. And then finally, in that kind of the third area within that last column of the DOS tool is that idea of youth voice. So just providing those opportunities for youth to be able to express their thoughts or their feelings, their ideas, giving them opportunities to make decisions. I think we saw that in a couple of those other tools as well, that idea of decision making and how youth need opportunities to practice and learn how to make decisions and what happens with that. And that could be making decisions about, what sorts of materials they might want to use or who they want to work with or what sort of product or way they want to show what they know. There can be lots of opportunities for youth to kind of make some decisions within a learning opportunity. And then also, having the opportunity for youth to give feedback about certain learning experiences. So, how are they going to show you what they know? And then what do they think about that? What did they like, or what maybe did they not like as much, or how would they, what suggestions do they have to improve an activity or an experience? We like to frame that a lot of times as having students or the youth that we're working with complete show what you know type of assessment. So instead of calling it, a reflection or an assessment, we just say, kind of have that positive frame on it. At the beginning of the time, what do you know about said topic, at the beginning of the unit or the week or whatever it might be, and then show me what you know at the end. And then what other sorts of thoughts or comments do you have, or questions do you still have, kind of is a good way to get some of that youth feedback, that youth voice coming through with the activities that you do. So just a few suggestions there, ideas of things that have kind of worked for us, and little things that you might be able to incorporate to help bring in a little bit more of that social emotional piece as you go. And then now kind of, again, putting it all together, thinking about it from kind of those different places. So whether you're coming from more of that STEM, you're more confident in the STEM areas, you have, certain processes that you might be providing opportunities for youth to be involved in. So that scientific process, or maybe that engineering design process, that's kind of starting from that STEM mindset, and thinking about those different parts of those processes really have a lot of connections to a lot of the pieces or parts when we're coming from more of that social emotional kind of framework or mindset, where we're thinking about, solving problems from the social emotional standpoint, or when we are looking at some of our employability skills standards, we see a lot of correlations. There's a lot of similar words or phrases that appear in all of these different sets of kinds of ways to think about things. So wherever you are off to a good start. There are very, a lot of very easy ways to make connections among these different kinds of thought processes. So a lot where you're questioning and thinking and testing something out, maybe reflecting on something or making a choice about something, lots of connections as you kind of lay it all out in this way. And I think sometimes it's kind of nice just to see things put out in kind of a very simple way where you can see some of the correlations straight on. So this is maybe another tool that you can use as you're thinking about your own work and how there's a lot of natural connections and correlations between STEM and SEL. And then, kind of where to start. We gave you some other ideas earlier about ways to specifically address, certain aspects, but in general, just kind of where do you start and how do you start incorporating these two areas together more? And really, it's just, what we've said, just kind of be practical and think about your own place and space, your own lessons and activities or opportunities that you're providing, and how can you just start to bring in a little bit more time for connecting or sharing or even play. We learn a lot from, some of that unstructured time too, especially with our younger kids. The thinking about compassion over compliance, does something have to be done a certain way and according to a certain timeline, or can we be free to kind of say yes a little bit or be a little bit more flexible to what's going to appeal more to the youth that we're working with? Thinking about how we're going to assess students and learn about what they know and how they've grown. How are they going to show us their growth? Having different ways that can happen and being open to not just one way or idea. Considering the why, why is it that you have chosen as the teacher or the facilitator to do a particular activity, and then what sorts of connections can happen from that? What's sticking out with the youth that you're working with? Why is it being impactful to them? So asking those questions and listening to responses. Modeling resilience, right? We are all getting really good at having to work through some hard situations, but how are we helping kids work through those hard experiences that are coming their way, those challenges or things that they're struggling with, whether it is a content piece or whether it's more of a social, emotional piece, something that's more so about how they're feeling. So, giving those times to talk about our feelings or share about what's going on, doing those check-ins. I've been even doing that with my own kids at home, just kind of taking some time to, all right, let's do a quick check-in. How's everybody feeling today? What's going on? Just because it just helps to feel like there's someone that will listen. And, how can you help model how kids can work through some of these harder times? And then again, just that creating connections. I think we've talked about that quite a bit in what we've been talking about today, but, making connections with the people that you are around and interacting with, making connections to the world around you, and then making those connections to content. And Vera's going to take it a little bit more from here and share a little bit more about those making connections.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Angela. And I think it's so important right now for all of us to kind of think about, there's so much we want to do when we're working with youth because of the current climate and the current situation. And we can only do what we can today. And we have to really start with the end in mind. What is it that I want to do from that content piece? What is it that I know I want to connect with on that social emotional piece? Because whenever I'm teaching a lesson, no matter what it is, or whatever I'm setting up, and I'm actually working with a young person, I really am engaging with them in that social emotional place. Maybe I'm not always attuned to that, and that's not always a good thing. Even with my own children, I have to remember whatever the situation is, that's part of it. I mean, every learning experience has that, because that whole child has not just the content they need to know, but they're coming to us with all of their pieces. So how do I how am I become myself aware of that in my lessons and my activities and the work we're doing, that I have that content I'm delivering, but I'm also delivering that social emotional. And how do I decide what are the pieces and the ends in mind that I want to get to? Is it questioning that I want to work on a learning situation? And if that's questioning, then, when I'm questioning and then asking them to make a choice, then I'm also kind of moving into that there's different kinds of choices and different things are going to turn out and some aren't, and failures may be going to happen. So keeping that in my mind of where I'm going. And then also thinking about how can I connect what I'm currently doing, those intentions, intentionally doing something maybe a little different. Like Angela was saying, you're all doing good work already. Is there something you can shift a little bit to maybe encourage that STEM and SEL connection in a different way than you did before? And one of those ways is through literature. We know that literature from a young child all the way up into the adults that we are today, are engaged in literature in some way. And if that connects some STEM content and SEL, even better. When I can do that, it's so great. Today, I took a minute and actually read one of the books that we have on this slide stack that we're sharing with you. And I thought, oh, this was so important for me to read today. It's The Bag of Worries, and Angela's going to touch on it in a minute or two. But it helped me even think about all those things that are going through my mind and the importance of sharing what you're worrying about. What are you anxious about? What is important there? And how really the science, we know that too. The more we can name things, right now we're all dealing with chronic unpredictability. One of our staff members mentioned that, and I just love it because we've named it. So can we connect a literature piece to help us wherever we are, also teach some STEM content, but also connect to that SEL. So maybe there's a book that you've used. We throw a bunch on this slide here to give you an idea. Maybe there's one that you've used that you really like. There's one here that goes back in time with me, back to Swimmy. Swimmy was one of the books that I had as a little girl. And I really loved that story. I loved it for many reasons. I love the pictures in it. And I love the idea of how, you can adapt and use teamwork and collaborate together to overcome. I don't know if I really thought that as a child, but I know that it really resonated with me that if you had more fish working in a situation, you could do something powerful. So that's kind of the idea with the Swimmy. Is there something that you've used before? Is there a new book that's popped in that helps you connect that STEM and SEL? And sometimes the youth are the ones that even make those connections for you. They're like, oh, I didn't know this part of the story might connect to that. Or I learned this in this book. Angela, is there a book that you've come across lately or one that's happening at your house with your girls that's kind of following into this realm?
So we just got for Christmas, and it goes along with the bad seed and the good egg, but there's now the smart cookie. And we just got that one for Christmas. But again, just thinking about how I love it because it talks about how kids all learn in different ways and kind of on different timelines a little bit. And we're all smart kind of in different ways. So, I think my own kids have connected with that and knowing that, understanding that people can be smart in lots of different ways. You might be a little more art smart or a little more math smart, or, you're good with words or that sort of thing. So we've really enjoyed the smart cookie lately at my house personally. And then I'm seeing the rainbow fish and the sandwich swap coming into the chat. I also added to the chat the color monster, which we just got with the STEM connection. We just got that one, and just being able to kind of put names with those different emotions or feelings you're having. Sometimes that's hard for kids. So I'm really excited to be able to have that as a resource for us too.
I will say I benefit from reading these as much as I know our youth do. I mean, every time I read a book, there's many layers to it. And these always, like I said, I love the one I read today. It was just what I needed when I was thinking about preparing for this. And then thinking of the uncertainty that we are all facing, and that how our youth are facing that uncertainty, and how we can use those literature connections just to make that opportunity to be able to open up and discuss and try and think forward with them. So we've shared a couple more tips and tricks here that we've used over the last couple of years as we're thinking about SEL, especially with the fact that it has been such a strange and traumatic time for our young people. And some of these we've already kind of touched on as we were moving through, but we love to just reset them in a different way for you to maybe something's going to connect with you on a different slide that didn't before. But taking a minute to think about what can we do just in a shift. I love that idea of celebrating the big and the small and those mindfulness pieces. How does that breathing help us reset for a minute? Is there a way I can bring a home object to my learning experience because it's going to help that child feel more connected? Is there a way to even bring in a live animal? Do you have a therapy dog that nearby that you could bring in? I would love to bring that in. I know my son's in college and he was talking about how they've actually had some therapy dogs on campus over the last couple semesters, just because it's been so strange. And I know he loves animals. He's animal smart. And so he was like, Mom, it's been great. I can just kind of stop by and the dogs are there. And it's just, he mentioned that. I thought, that makes me really happy that he has that opportunity. So is there something we can do to help or switch things out or modify? Here's are some of the ones we have that have worked for us. And if you have anything that's worked for you, or you've heard of, or you want to try, pop it in, because the more we're hearing about opportunities, the better. Another one that's not on here that we know for sure is that idea of resetting and just stepping outside for a minute. We know the power of it. Our programming takes place primarily outside. So we have that constant ability to reset in nature. But I just know for myself, when I'm starting to feel as though the world is getting really heavy and I can't see where those next steps are, I know that just stepping outside for a minute just changes everything. So is there a way I can do that in my learning experience? Is there a way I can teach it even in the winter? Is there something I could teach outside because it's going to make sense, even in that content space? I know when I think about some of the STEM content we've taught over the years, there's a lot of it that would be great to step outside and think about. Shadows are really good in winter. We know that is definitely a content piece, especially in elementary and then even into middle school, taking a minute to thinking about, day and night, and where is the sun in our sky? Where's the moon in our sky? What's happening in all those relationships is kind of a fun thing to think about in winter. Those mood check-ins, is there something that you've used when you're thinking about those relationships? We've done some stickers too, where they like a certain color means something and they can share those stickers with us, or they have an opportunity if they do need to reset, there's a space they can go to, whatever that looks like. Is there something that's working for you that you've done in this realm, or what might be a way that you've been able to check in with your young people? What are you seeing pop in, Angela?
We just had one comment. We know that some of our educators work in places, or even with your own family, where prayer or intention is something that might be a part of your day. So that's another way to just kind of make those connections, or just see if students have anything they want to kind of offer up and put out there for kind of well wishes or positive thoughts or prayers, is another way for those that have that.
Well, and that idea of naming the concern or that fear or whatever it is, those safe spaces for sure are so powerful. And even when, you have older children, those are still really powerful, and making those times for opportunity to share in that way and then take it further. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. I'm going to switch things over a little bit now for Angela. She's going to share an activity because we want you to leave today with something that's going to work for you. And we want to share about a resource that might help you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, one of the programs we have is our STEM Quick Wins program. And this kind of came out of, our pivoting or shifting when COVID originally came about and we were all kind of in lockdown for a while. But how could we still serve educators and families and youth, even when we weren't seeing them in person? So we came up with our STEM Quick Wins, which are all just kind of quick and easy STEM activities that can be done from kind of any location, wherever you are, whether that's a school or a community center, or even at your own home or students' homes. So easy, kind of easily accessible materials, pretty short and sweet. But the idea is that there's a quick 1-page kind of instruction sheet, a short video that goes with it to kind of show and explain it a little bit, and then you're kind of off and going. So this is one example. We have a number of activities that fall within that SEL kind of category. So here's one example so you can kind of get an idea.
It's called Kindness Rocks.
STEM Connection. Today I'm here with my friends, Cammie and Molly. And our STEM quick win is Kindness Rocks. Exactly. So, Cammie, what's one of the main focuses of the STEM Connection? To make the world a better place. Exactly. So what are some ways that we can do that? Give somebody a compliment or don't litter. Exactly. I love both of those ideas. Another way you can make the world a better place is by participating in the Kindness Rock Project. So what you do is you decorate a rock and leave it where someone might find it. So that way it can brighten their day. So what we've done to get ready is we've taken some rocks, we've cleaned them, and we've spray painted them. And now the girls are about to decorate them. So you girls ready? Ready. All right, let's go. All right, so now the girls have decorated their rocks. They're making me smile already. So now it's your guys' turn. Go decorate some rocks and make the world a better place. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.
So the 3 core values of the STEM Connection are we take care of ourselves, we take care of others, and we take care of the earth. One way we can take care of ourselves, others, and the earth is to be kind to ourselves, others, and the earth. And one way that we can do that is through Kindness Rocks and participation in the Kindness Rocks Project. To learn more about the Kindness Rocks Project, please visit thekindnessrocksproject.com.
This STEM Quick Win is financially sponsored by the Eli Lilly and Company Foundation.
Just a great example of an activity that has that social emotional piece, but there's so much STEM that could be embedded kind of within that activity. So we know rocks and the rock cycle come up, in the standards as far as content. So how might you just, go from a rock study maybe to an extension into that social emotional piece, or using rocks as a way to collect some data, like for math, where maybe you're measuring the mass of each of the rocks, and then you're gonna collect that data and calculate some measures of center or graph that information in some way. So you can kind of think about this activity, and the activity itself might be Kindness Rocks, but there's a lot of STEM content that could get connected as well. So this could be maybe just kind of a fun social emotional learning opportunity that comes from maybe using those rocks in a different way. So just one connection, more, I think at this point there's about 120 activities on the STEM Quick Wins page of our website, and there are a handful of them that are specifically kind of under that social emotional learning piece. So just a few ideas to get you started. And then, so looking at STEM Quick Wins is one place to get some activity ideas, but also any of those ways to just kind of connect with nature. There's so much, just, you go outside wherever you are, and there's so much that you can see, or so much that you could do with those materials that you might be able to find there. And through Emotional Literacy Outdoors, we found this activity that we just thought was very fitting just right now. I mean, talking about relevance and how kids are just carrying a lot of stuff with them and those worries, and, how we might be able to use a book, but then, to kind of touch on some of those social emotional pieces, but then having an activity that might be rooted in some STEM, or using some natural materials, or in an outdoor setting, because we know that the outdoors themselves can be have so many benefits to just being outdoors for everyone. So another activity that could be utilized in your class or the program that you have. And then we all know, as we were kind of putting together the thoughts to share with you today, we feel passionate about the STEM and incorporating those social emotional pieces into the work that we do. And we know that you have some similar thoughts, but for those that might not have as much of an understanding about the importance or the impact of having these SEL experiences, these are just a couple quotes or little pieces of information that just kind of help us share the impact. So, it's really about helping to develop that whole child and giving, youth those skills that are going to help them be successful, moving forward, like where they are right now, but then moving into the future and being able to take advantage of some of those opportunities that could be there for them if they have the right set of skills. So just a couple little kind of quotes there to just share that impact of these sorts of learning opportunities and how they can influence and impact kids. And then we always like to share the resources that we used, because really in our time here in just about 50 minutes, we have just really presented a few ideas to get you started. But if there's anything you want to learn more about or go a little bit deeper with, these are a few of the resources that we used in compiling the information for today. So a couple, like that first one is just really the primary kind of go-to spot for social emotional learning pieces, and then a little bit more as far as just some other ideas or some great read alouds and that sort of thing. So just some resources for you to use as you're thinking about your next steps and what you might want to learn more about, or how you might want to take it into your class and program from there. And Vera is going to just kind of finish us up. Let us kind of think about and reflect for a minute on what's been presented today. So Vera, finish us up.
To think about if there's something you might want to start as you are moving forward in this thought of STEM and SEL and in our current world. Is there something you might want to stop? And what might you want to continue? Because we know that you're already doing good work, and there's probably pieces that you can take and move forward with. And there's going to be something you might want to start with, and there might be something you want to stop and leave behind. So take that minute to think about that start, stop, and continue, as you also think about what stuck from today. What was it that really spoke to you? What's maybe a opportunity you want to pursue deeper? Is there also a way you want to share this information with the young people that you're working with, or their parents, or would it be possibly administration, or questions you have going forward? What might have stuck from our conversation? Maybe it was something you saw in the chat box. Maybe it was something you saw on a slide. Maybe it was something that you heard us say that you want to dig a little deeper into. So that idea of what you want to stop, what you want to start, and what you want to continue. And is there something that really stuck with you today? If you could add that to the chat box, that just helps us get better. We appreciate your ability today to just be really patient with us, with our technology. Again, that idea of adaptability and being able to go with the flow. We're really working on that. When we think we have it all figured out, that's usually when we might have something we still need to figure out. So thank you for your patience. Loved having you with us. If you could pop something to the chat box about what stuck from our time today, that would be great. Also, just so here's a link about the other things coming up, and we will be sharing these out with you as well. You can always reach out to us. Here's our emails. We'd love to connect. But if something stuck from you today, please go ahead and pop that into the chat box. Angela, is there anything that you stuck with you today, or something you want to go deeper? Are you seeing anything in the chat box? Anyone sharing ideas or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I am seeing in the chat box the idea about that connections before content, and that can be applied to youth and adults. So no matter who you're working with or what you have kind of going on in the work that you do, the connections piece just being really important to go. And then, yeah, just having a chance to look through some of the literature links and seeing how those could be used or applied, with the kids that they're working with.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think those connection before content, especially right now, because we feel as though, and it's true, we know that young people are not taking in the content and then mastering the content at the level they were pre-pandemic. So in our minds, the urgency to be sure we're sharing information and teaching. But before we do that, we really have to remember that that connection is still so important. And that balance, I know as an educator, that's always on my mind, or in any type of work I do, I always am thinking about what I got to get done. But I always think that importance of connecting first and how important that is for me. And then for the people I'm working with, the young that we're serving, wherever that falls in. So thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for joining us today. We hope we connect with you in person sometime soon. And we hope for better days ahead for all of us. Stay safe, take care, and thanks for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.